Hi, my name is Vamsi, and I'm the cybersecurity architect here at NextGen. Today, we're going to cover the fastest growing cyber attacks, also known as ransomware. Ransomware is a form of malware that encrypts a victim's files. The attacker then demands a ransom from the victim to restore access to the data upon payment. Users are shown instructions for how to pay a fee to get the decryption key. The cost can range from a few $100s to thousands, payable to cybercriminals in the infamous Bitcoin. Ransomware is a big business. There's a lot of money in ransomware, and the market expanded rapidly from the beginning of the decade. In 2017, ransomware resulted in $5 billion in losses, both in terms of ransoms paid and spending, and the lost time in recovering from attacks. That's up 15 times from 2015. In the first quarter of 2018, just one ransomware software called SamSam collected $1 million in ransomware money. Some markets are particularly prone to ransomware and to paying the ransom. Many high-profile ransomware attacks have occurred in hospitals or other medical organizations, which makes them tempting targets. Attackers know that, and especially with lives literally in the balance, these enterprises are more likely to simply pay a relatively low ransom to make the problem go away. So how does it work? There's a number of vectors ransomware can take to access a computer. One of the most common delivery systems is phishing scam, right? Attachments that come to the victim in the form of an email. They're masquerading as a file that you should trust when you shouldn't. Once they're downloaded and opened, they can take over the victim's computer, especially if they have built-in social engineering tools that trick users into allowing them to get administrative access. So some other more aggressive forms of ransomware, such as NotPetya, which was an infamous one, they exploit security holes to infect computers without even needing to trick users. There are several things the malware might do once it's taken over a victim's computer, but by far the most common action is to encrypt some or all of the user's files. But the most important thing to know is that at the end of the process, that these files cannot be decrypted without a mathematical key known only by the initial attacker. So the user is presented with a message explaining that their files are now inaccessible and will only be decrypted if the victim sends an untraceable Bitcoin payment back to the original attacker. In some forms of malware, the attacker might claim to be a law enforcement agency, shutting down the victim's computer. Due to the presence of some type of data that might be pirated or illegally downloaded, they demand a payment or a quote fine to make the victim less likely to report the attack to authorities. But most attacks don't even bother with this pretense, right? Why bother with a plot line? There's also a variation called leakware, and this is where the attacker threatens to publicize sensitive data on the victim's hard drive unless a ransom is paid. But because finding and extracting such information is a pretty tricky proposition for attackers, encryption ransomware is by far the most common type. So who is a target for ransomware, right? Who is most likely to be attacked? There's several different ways attackers choose the organizations that they want to target with ransomware. Sometimes it's a matter of just market opportunity. So for instance, attackers might target universities because they tend to have smaller security teams, less budget, and they have a big user base of students who do a lot of file sharing, which makes it easier to penetrate just the overall security defenses. On the other hand, some organizations are tempting because they seem more likely to pay a ransom quickly. So for instance, government agencies or medical facilities, they often need immediate access to their files. Law firms and other organizations with sensitive data, they might be more willing to pay to keep news of a compromise quiet, right? They don't want to damage their reputation. And these organizations may be uniquely sensitive to just specifically these type of leakware attacks. How do you prevent ransomware? What's the best way to go about this? So there's a number of defensive steps you can take to prevent ransomware infection. These steps are a good course of security practices in general, so following them improves your defenses from all sorts of attacks. 1. Keep your operating system patched and up to date to ensure you have fewer vulns to exploit. 2. Don't install software or give it admin privileges unless you know exactly what it is and what it does. Don't make those simple mistakes. 3. Install antivirus software, right? And this detects malicious programs like ransomware as soon as they arrive. You want to whitelist software and prevent unauthorized applications from executing even in the first place. 4. And of course, back up your files frequently and automatically. That won't stop a malware attack, but it can help minimize whatever damage that occurs. One thing to really take note is if you want to remove ransomware. If your computer has been infected with ransomware, you'll need to regain control of your machine and your assets in the first place. So typically what happens is you reboot, you install anti-malware software, you scan the system, you restore the computer back to its initial previous state. But here's the most important thing to keep in mind while walking through these steps. It can help remove the malware from your computer and restore it to your control, but it won't decrypt your initial files. Their transformation into unreadability has already happened. And if the malware is at all sophisticated, it'll be mathematically impossible for anyone to decrypt them without access to that attacker's key, which only they hold. In fact, by removing the malware, you've precluded the possibility of restoring your files by paying the attackers the ransom they've asked for. So you might be actually asking for more trouble in this situation. The best way to prevent this is to add security awareness to your organization and train your employees from downloading these malicious files in the first place. As always, our program covers all of these topics, so remember to subscribe and talk to us to learn more.
Jacob Hess here. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you really enjoyed it. And I'd also like to remind you, if you're truly serious about your career in information technology, be sure to check out our IT engineer training programs at www.zerotoengineer.com.